Are you ready to make some healthier choices in life? I'm Margaret McSweeney, host of Kitchen Chat. So glad you're joining me today at Grail Springs Wellness Retreat Center. And we're here with the holistic nutritionist, Avita. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure and welcome.
Well, thank you. And I am truly on a health journey, trying to make some better decisions midlife that will truly help with my health. As many of you know, I am a 4-year breast cancer survivor, very happy about that. And it's time to start making the right decisions. And part of that is being empowered with simple and easy ways to know what to eat, when to eat, and how to prepare it. So I so appreciate your taking the time today, Avita, to walk me through this path.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure really to empower and help people and really have the guests of Grail Springs benefit so much in terms of knowing what to do exactly in terms of the questions that you're asking.
Yes, and I love that your philosophy, your kitchen philosophy, not only is food as medicine, but also simple things that you can take home and start anew that aren't intimidating, that aren't imitating as either. It's all real. It's real food, things that will nurture your body. Now, through this process of being here, I've learned a bit about, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, alkanization.
Alkalinization,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. It tends to be a new concept for many people, especially that even though we hear a lot about healthy eating today, and there seems to be an emphasis more on whole foods, more on plant foods, but we don't hear a lot about the alkaline part of it or foods that are alkalizing. And this is one of the biggest parts of the Grail kitchen philosophy and food philosophy in terms of healing and prevention and protection also, and helping just to even cleanse and detoxify, which is what many guests actually come to the Grail Springs for. And so with alkalization, it works on the principle that it's not how the food enters our body that makes the biggest difference, but actually what it digests into. And this is the alkalizing effect or acidifying effect that it would have on our tissues, on our cells, and most importantly, on our bloodstream. And so this is one of the biggest tenets of what acid alkaline balance or diet means.
And it really goes to the cellular level. This is what's surprising. I mean, from a scientific perspective, how is this all working together?
Well, it goes back to the idea again that all foods basically have an acidifying or alkalizing effect on our body. And how this is basically measured or determined is based on the characteristics of different foods. For example, is it a plant food or is it an animal food? Is it a whole food or is it a processed refined food, right? Is the food higher in various amino acids or various fatty acids or various, carbohydrate components and such? So this is sort of the quick summary of the chemistry of it. But what matters most to us, and an analogy that I like to use sometimes, is what results and what impact the resulting products of digestion have on our health and body. Because it's kind of like, we're sitting beside a fireplace, and when we put in, for example, a new log into the fire, we know that its properties are very different than what ends up staying there in the end, right? The ash. So during the burning process or during the digestion and metabolizing of our food components or nutrients, I shouldn't say the same thing, but a very similar thing happens in terms of what comes in isn't the same in terms of what results. And we want more alkaline ash, literally the end products of digestion, because this is what is so healing and protective. Acidity basically eats away in terms of at our, whether it comes to causing inflammation in our cells and our tissues, in our joints, of course, arthritis is very much linked to chronic acidity. It also causes a lot of stress for organs. And so this is another big part of making sure that we know how to balance our food, balance our diet. And this is something that Grail Springs pays attention to so much, so that the diet is as healing and protective as possible, not destructive.
And I have to say, it's also delicious. And many of the recipes are featured in this Grail Springs Retreat Recipes for Life, Beautiful Foods and Words to Live By. And the food is just so delicious, and it's all vegetarian, and you can taste the love and nurturing that has been prepared. But when you're looking at, okay, what's alkaline and what's non-alkaline or alkalizing, I'll learn how to pronounce that soon. What foods should we have in our refrigerator, in our pantry?
The first focus has to be on plant foods. And in general, to have a healing, protective, acid alkaline balanced diet, we want to make sure that there's about 3/4 of these alkalizing foods in our diet to about 1/4 of acidifying foods. And so the alkalizing foods predominantly and fully pretty much come from plant foods, but specifically whole plant foods, and more specifically fruits and vegetables. And if we want to get even more specific, it's the leafy greens, the vegetable greens, as well as lemons and limes. And this is why, for example, something like the Grail elixir is so healing, alkalizing, protective as well.
Yes, and here is the Grail elixir. It is delicious, and we just made another video. You'll have to look at that with the recipe for it. Very easy to do, an easy and simple addition to your daily routine. That's adding health. I mean, it doesn't have to be a major overhaul. I mean, is that what you recommend? Just take simple steps?
Absolutely, because that's what ultimately is going to be sustainable for us and not overwhelm us and stress us more, right? So it's exactly as you share. It's about the simplicity of connecting back with our food in a way that, we can manage and we can understand in effective ways. So here in the kitchen and also in the Recipes for Life book, the recipes are based on whole plant foods that are automatically geared towards the acid alkaline balance, and also ones that we can quickly and easily work with in our lives, so they don't feel intimidating, but they feel real and practical, and of course delicious.
Yes, that's a key word. Definitely delicious. What other tips as a holistic nutritionist would you have for the listeners and viewers? And what are some other philosophies that you have here at Grail Springs in terms of the food element? Because food is an important ingredient of life.
Oh, most definitely. And when it comes to food, one of the biggest things that I always try to share with guests is we have to pay attention today to the quality of our food. And so not just here in the Grail kitchen, but also to apply in our own homes, to focus on foods that are as much as possible organic, local, seasonal, farm to table, basically as fresh as possible is so very important, because that's where we're getting the highest nutrient density or the most nutrients also, and not losing so much of the goodness that is supposed to heal, protect, and support our bodies. So that's a big part of it, is definitely pay attention to the quality of your food and take the steps as much as possible to keep improving that quality. And another big component of the food philosophy in general is also mindful eating. And that's where we get into portions, right? And how much we eat, when we eat, and basically eating in a mindful manner, because this actually changes our digestion tremendously and has such positive impacts on us in general.
The mindful eating, this is a whole new concept. So does that mean like no cell phone distractions at the table? I mean, is that part of the mindfulness as well? What are the different elements for that?
Definitely. It's really, first is when we're eating to come back to the act of eating. That means, yes, no cell phones, no texting, no TVs, etc. And it's beautiful to eat in social encounters, perhaps, in situations, but still to keep that focus on what is it that I'm eating? What is nourishing me right now? And, how does this taste, right? We've become so disconnected from the true flavor of our food that even just our, in general in society's use of all the condiments, etc., is just to come back to the food's natural, beautiful flavors, colors, textures, and to immerse ourselves in that. And when we do that, this is what, again, helps us overall, helps our digestion, but also helps us to not overeat, for example, helps us to be more mindful of what we eat and therefore make better choices.
That is so true. And also be willing to explore. I mean, you have presented here at Grail Springs from the kitchen some things I've never even heard of. Today at lunch on this beautiful wrap that was there, the kale and avocado wrap, was a ground cherry or something, like this tiny little yellow. It was like unwrapping a present. It was still in its leaves and you had to peel that off. So I love that you can think outside of the box and introduce new ingredients as well.
Oh, for sure. And that's part of it so much that it's not just using food as medicine, which, I mean, our food is so powerful, again, so healing, protective, preventative, but it's about exploring and celebrating the beauty of food, right? We know this is such a big part of our human experience. And so as you got, as you saw that excitement, that curiosity of trying new flavors, experiencing new types of foods, that is also such a big part of it.
Yes, and such an important tenet, I guess, here at Grail Springs is they want to make sure everyone is educated and that the finding and creating the beauty within, and that also definitely applies to the food that is provided. It's just such a wonderful experience.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, and that's very much a big part of it. Is when you asked also, I wanted to share a little bit more about that philosophy of what else besides the food is, yes, that enjoyment plays such a big role and the mindfulness component to eating, but also the Grail encompasses just mindfulness in general in all of our choices, right? And to focus more on listening to ourselves, our bodies, how they are speaking to us, right? Because that's when we can also make better choices as well.
Yes. And I am at the stage in my life, I know it's late coming, but I am on a path to better choices with food and mindfulness and healthy living. And I'm just so grateful to Grail Springs. I'm going to include a link, dear listeners and viewers, to the wonderful programs that are here. And definitely check it out, and the recipes and the grand elixir, or the Grail elixir, which is very grand indeed, but simple. Just back to simplicity and finding the flavor. I love that, talking about finding the flavor. Any other last bit of takeaway for our listeners and viewers about healthy choices and the types of food we should be choosing?
Absolutely. Well, one of the retreats actually here at the Grail is a retreat called Blessed. And, whenever that topic comes up, and I love sharing about this with guests, that how do we bless ourselves with our food? That's such a big tip that I always like to leave the audience with is see your food not just as something you bless, but how do you bless yourselves with your food? And so on that note, picking again foods that are as fresh and wholesome, of as high quality as possible, and predominantly plant foods, because we know today that in our plant foods we have so much medicine, so much healing value, so much benefits, and from the alkalinity to the phytonutrients to the vitamins to the minerals, it's just, nature gave us such an incredible gift. And I think, the time has come for us to really seize that gift and not just survive, but learn how to thrive.
I love that. Not just survive, but learn to thrive. And just great takeaways for all of us. Thank you so much, Avita.
You're so very welcome. My pleasure.
Oh, and thank you, dear listeners and viewers, for tuning into today's Kitchen Chat. I'll make sure I have all the links to Grail Springs for you. And I love the whole concept of mindfulness in eating and to be blessed by your food. So always remember to take a moment and savor the day.